Refugee Cove is a fictional novel written by Leslie Choice. Within this novel, there are many episodes of conflict. In my visual, I chose an episode of character versus character conflict. Character versus character conflict refers to two or more characters having either a physical or mental struggle with one another. My conflict that I chose to use occurs when Greg is sailing his boat and he goes to look at a strange weird thing out in the water and nearly gets killed by one of the refugees. For example, on page 24, Greg peeks into the life raft that is covered in a tarp. It says, "The guy had one hand tight on my throat, and I was pinned down." This example proves the character versus character conflict going on between the two, simply because the man is trying to kill him, showing the struggle between these two characters in the form of a physical altercation they are in. This also shows character versus character conflict because Greg has to argue with them and convince them that he won't tell anyone about them or else that he will be killed. Thus, the conflict in my visual is when Greg finds refugees in their life raft. Number 2. Refugee Cove is a fictional novel written by Leslie Choice. I think this novel is quite good. Although there are highs, there are also lows. The highs being my favorite part in the book when Greg's mom faces tons of internal conflict when Greg walks in with the refugees helping them to stay the night. Furthermore, a low point in the book is when Greg goes out to sea on a sailboat for the first time in Newfoundland and has to get saved by Harold. For example, on page 43, Greg's mom is freaking out over the refugees that entered their house out of nowhere. It says, "I don't trust that man. I don't like any of this. What are they, drug smugglers?" This example is my favorite part of the novel because Greg's mom is having huge conflict with herself. I also like internal conflict a lot, causing me to like this section of the book more than all the rest. Her being so stressed out also gives her tons of characterization, making multiple reasons why this is my favorite part of the book. To continue, a low part in this book is when Greg has a little trip out to sea that goes wrong. For example, on page 11, Greg flips his boat when Harold comes to rescue him. It says, "I yelled and screamed until I was hoarse. Harold reached over and helped me on board." In my opinion, I do not like this part of the book because it is such a predictable scene. This is because before Greg went out in his boat, Harold was warning him and telling him to be careful, and Greg was being super cocky and telling Harold that he was fine and super good at sailing his boat. Another reason I do not like this part of the book is because Greg is characterized to be a super good with his boat. Then he went on to make a super dumb move and decide to go out far into the rough waters to look at a little iceberg he saw. It makes it seem like the author mischaracterized Greg in this form because if Greg was such a good sailor, he would have never made such a bad decision as that. Thus, I think this book is good with many highs, although there are some lows. 3. Refugee Cove is a fictional novel written by Leslie Choice. Within this novel, there are multiple forms of characterization towards the protagonist, Greg. Characterization refers to the traits the writer uses to describe a character. Greg is a generous boy for helping the refugees, even under the circumstance that they are insane. For example, on page 23, Greg was talking to the refugees in their life raft. It says, "You tell, I kill." This example proves that Greg is a generous boy because the author shows the refugees to be crazy and would not hesitate to kill anyone, even though Greg was trying to help them. Although the man threatened to kill Greg, he went on to not run away, but to stay and help them out, even though he could have been killed at any moment. Thus, Greg is generous because of his help toward the refugees, even though they could kill him.